everyone. Welcome, office hours again. Thanks for joining. And as you all know, today's session, actually, we're focusing on, hi Gavin, we're focusing on Android publishing, which is kind of a pain from time to time, let's say. But with Draftbit's one-hit publish, we're just overcoming many obstacles. So it's easy with Draftbit Builder, but still we need to be careful about what we're setting in the builder as well. And today, actually, Rahul with us, and Rahul, you all know him, I guess, our success and experts lead. Hi, Rahul. Welcome.
Hi everyone. Hi Gavin. Hi Felix. I'm just setting things up here while Mesa, you do what you're doing.
Okay. So, during our session, although this session is, we're going to concentrate on Android publishing, your questions about the builder or about your apps that you're struggling with any issues, you're welcome to ask them here, and we can try troubleshoot them live here. Rahul with us today. So please feel free to ask your questions regarding Android publishing or anything else in Draftbit. We are happy to answer them all. And yeah, we can start, I guess, if you're ready, of course, Rahul.
Sure. Just give me one more moment. So the idea here for everyone is we'll create a brand new app in Draftbit, and we'll follow all the steps which are necessary to do the publishing, including, let's see if we get there fast, including submitting the build as well. Because the build usually takes 20 minutes to build. If it completes at the end of its hours, we should be able to show you that part as well. So just bear with me. I'll start sharing my screen and we'll walk through all the steps.
Okay.
And as Ramesa said, feel free to ask any questions you have. Once we complete with this demo, we'll try to get to those.
Yes. I'm going to ask questions though. Like, for example, many of our users are asking questions like, for example, if I have more than one project, do I have to use a separate service account file or questions like that, right?
Yeah, perfect. That would actually be great because some of those questions don't come across my mind. So any questions that you have, and to the best of my knowledge, I'll try to answer those.
Great.
Okay, so almost there. And this is cool. So this is the first time we are doing office hours in a Google meeting. I hope you guys like it. We are open to feedback about things that you like and don't like. And I'm about to start now. So.
And just for your information, everyone, I'm sorry, this session is being recorded. So you're always welcome to ask your questions, and you can just raise your hand and ask your questions, but just be aware of that. This is being recorded and will be posted to YouTube.
Perfect. So let's begin. As you can see, I'm starting with a brand new app in Draftbit. And just putting something in the app, I'll just add a text component. Oops. Let me just switch off my notifications and Okay. So yeah, just setting up this app. Bear with me a moment. Just gonna say Angular publishing demo for now. Then give this view a flex of 1, so it takes up this entire screen. And then let's just put it in the center. Okay, obviously a very, very simple app, but the idea here is to do it as fast as possible so we can show you the next steps. So as you can see, the first thing I did was I made this project live. So in Draftbit, your live projects are the only ones that you can publish to the stores. Now, the next step would be clicking on the publish button and then doing the Google Play Store setup. So let's click on setup. We have great docs here, and by next week, I think these docs would be updated to reflect all the new changes that Google has done. And keep that in mind, these changes are not finished. Google is planning on making a whole bunch of new changes in their policies, so be aware of that. And we will also be trying to update our docs according to their new changes. So the first step with Google Publishing is having an Expo account. You can go create an account on expo.dev. So I'm already in an account. I can log out and then sign up. When you sign up for a new account, make sure that you sign up for an organization account and not a single user account, because let me see if I can sign up with a test account just to show you guys. And clicking on sign up. Apparently this account already exists, so let's do demo and then sign up. So just for your information, Expo account is a free account, and as I said before, we advise you to use an organization account so you can invite team members. Again, Expo recently made this change that they don't allow any members on a single account. So once you come to this step, you will need to convert this account to an organization account. It's asking me to verify my email. Let me do that on the side. Okay, we just verified our email. So these are the few things that will change once you convert your personal account to an organization account. It seems fine because you are just starting a new account, I'm assuming. So I understand. And click on next. Choose an organization owner. Please log in or sign up with an account that will become the owner of Alshula Demo organization. If you would like to transfer this project to another user, you can do by doing this. So for now, let me just sign up with another account. I just did that today with another user, and I don't think there's any other way of doing it. It would have been so much easier if Expo would have allowed an organization account from the sign up itself, but apparently it doesn't. Or let's just sign up. Go. Let's transfer this ownership. Let's convert this account. Cool. So now you can see we have an organization account, and then I can go back to dashboard, and I can. So again, this is an important step that took us a while to figure out. All you need to do now is go to organization, like click here on your account, you will see the organization. Once you see the organization, you will click on members, and then from here you can invite. So let's come back to Draftbit, select an Expo account name, so I can put in this as my account name. Once I do this, we would see that we add this text at the bottom, which basically tells you the Draftbit account that you would need to invite. So currently it's Android build services or Android builds at draftbit.com. So I can copy this, go to members, invite, add this email. Always make sure that you give us at least developer or above roles. I usually give myself admin, and then I can send it. And trust me, we're not going to do anything with your account. So I just did this. Once you do all of this, the Draftbit team gets an email to accept the invite, and then you can accept the invite. I'm just doing it now.
May I ask a question, Rahul?
Sure.
So we have an owner name, Rahul Shukla owner, and also we have an organization account name, right? Rahul Shukla demo. Which one should we enter in the project settings? The owner account name?
Thank you, Mesa. That's a great question. So you would want to put this account name, the organization account name, as the owner, not your personal account. So in here, it should be Rahul Shukla demo, which I did not do. So thank you for letting me know that. Demo. And save. Okay, let's not go to save. So that was the first step. That is creating an Expo account, or creating an Expo organization account to be specific. Now let's come back to the second step here. What kind of a build? So according to Google policies, the first build that you submit for an app to the Play Store, it needs to be submitted manually. So to solve that purpose, we have these three different build options. The first one is build. What this does, it will build an Android app bundle file for you, which you can access from your Expo account, or the Draftbit team member can send you a link to that build. You download that build and submit that manually to your Google Play Console account. Once that build is successfully submitted, you should come to this and move the status to build and submit. Now what this does is it will first create the build and then try to auto submit to the Play Console, so you don't have to do it manually anymore. And this is true for all types of builds on the Google Play Console. So I'm going to move it back to build and then move on to the next step. So we need to give a package name. In the Apple world, we call it bundle ID, but the process is the same. So you want to give a unique bundle name. It's usually in the reverse DNS style, how it says right here, which is com.example.app name. So I can just do com Draftbit test. I'm pretty sure I'm going to be using this, so I can probably say live demo. Okay. The next step is the release status. You can leave that to draft, and usually it will always stay in the draft. Now comes like the most challenging part, and where a lot of our users get confused, is the service account file. And that brings me to your question, Ramesa, which was, do we need a separate service account file for different apps? The answer is no. So you will only need one service account file per account, and you can publish multiple apps using that same service account file. I hope that's clear. Now let's see how we will generate this file. Now to generate this file, you would need to go to your Google Play console. Let me just do that on the side, and then I'll bring that over here. Any questions from my users? If not, that's good as well.
I want to ask something.
Sure.
If I missed it, I'm sorry. About release status. We have options for release status, and we usually leave it as draft.
Correct.
But is there any cases that we use other options when publishing?
No. So I think this will always stay in the draft mode. You don't need to move it to any other release status from the builder. This might be one of the things that Google used to have in the past, but it's not relevant anymore, but we just don't want to remove it. Does that answer your question, Ramesa?
Yes, very much. Thank you.
Sorry, I don't have like a very definite word, but yeah, that's what I know so far. Okay, so I'm here in my Google console account. So this is my personal account. Just so you guys are aware, once you set up your Google console account, it will ask you to do a verification. Make sure you do those steps, because without a verified account, you won't be able to publish these apps. These are just my test apps, so I can probably remove those and then start brand new. So this would look the same for everyone. So I'm here in the home or the dashboard of the Google Play console. My first step here would be to create an app. Let's give it an app name. I'll just call it demo app. Default language. Usually if you're publishing with Draftbit, it's always going to be app. You can try and build a game if you like. So it's a free app. I need to confirm these two as well. We strongly encourage you to read these if you want to, but I'm not going to be doing that right now. I'm going to create this app. Okay, so first step done. We have created a demo app, as you can see right here. And there's a set of questions that you'll get to once we start building. So now let's move on to generating that service account file. So for that, I would need to come back to my dashboard or all apps screen. And over here, you will see the setup. We will click on API access. Things used to be different here, but as we discussed with some recent changes that Google did, these things have changed a bit. So we'll open this link here. The only reason I'm opening this is it will give you the links for the next steps. so you don't have to get confused. So the first step here is basically create a project in Google Cloud Console. So let's just click there. And I just want to make sure I'm in my right account. So this is still my personal account, which is good. It will ask you to create a project name. Let's just leave it at my project 3435. If you have an organization, you can select an organization or leave it as no organization. That's fine. We'll click here to create. And now, if you can see here, my project that's selected by default is a different project that I just created. So always make sure you're using the project that you created. So I'll select this project. And now I'm at this page. Now let's go back. One thing I usually do is, oops. Oh. Okay, so back here. So that's step one done. We don't need anything else there. Now we need to enable the Google Play Developer API page or service. So I'll click here and open it in a new tab. Ensuring my project name is the same, which is correct. And that leads you to this page. You would just click on enable. Once it gets enabled, you will be redirected like this to this page. Now this is important. Let's click on credentials from here. Just so you know, Google Console is very confusing to me too, and I've been working with this for the last 2 years. So just follow these same steps and you should be fine. So in credentials, we will click on create credentials. We want to create a service account. Now these steps are basically similar to the older process, but I'll still go through it. I'm just going to call it Draftbit Publishing Test and copy this email address. So this is important. And then if you want to give it a description, you can. It's not required. I would click on create and continue. Okay, so moving on to the next step, which is grant the service account access to a project. This is important. So we'll click here. Please don't use this filter because that leads you to a different place. Instead, just scroll down here on this left-hand side section, and we will scroll. We will keep scrolling to service account. Here. Service accounts, you'll click here, and then on this right hand side panel, you will select service account user. That's it. We will click on continue. We don't need the third step. You can just say done. Now, once you're done, you would again be navigated back to the same page. Over here, scroll down to the service accounts and click on the service account name. You'll be redirected here. We'll go to keys. We'll add a new key. Leave it at default JSON. Now, once this key gets created, you'll see a file, but you'll automatically download this key. Keep this key in a safe spot, otherwise you have to generate a new one. And as Google says, this expires in the year 10,000 once we get there. Okay, so we have the key. That's basically what we require. So let's come back here, leaving this in draft. You click on upload and download this JSON file. There we go. Once we do all of this, we can click save.
So I have another question about this key. You need to store it in a safe place Because if user wants to publish their app outside Draftbit, they need that key, right?
Great question. Yes, you would require that key. So actually, that brings me to the next point. So just so you know, this key is basically required to do an auto submission. So if you don't use this key, you can still submit your app manually. Just every time you do a new build, you will upload the AAB file manually to the Google Play console, and you will still be fine. So what we did with this service account is basically we created a new user which has the permissions to do the submissions on your behalf. Does that make sense?
Yes, thank you. By the way, we have questions, Rahul, but maybe we can go over them after you finish.
Sure. So, and we are almost there. Now, this is a crucial step that sometimes even I forget to do, but it's important. We'll go back to this page. We'll go to users and permissions, and then clicking right here, we will need to invite the email that we just copied during our key generation process. So I'll paste that here. That's the service account email that we copied. You don't need to set an access expiry. If you want to, you can. And then in account permissions, I usually give admin permissions, but you should give appropriate permissions to what you did. Be right. And click on invite user. So now, since I've invited that user, now that service account file has access to basically publish on your behalf. So for some people who have a service account file, but they're still not able to publish their apps or auto submit their apps, one of the reasons could be either the service account file doesn't, or the service account doesn't have permissions to submit on their behalf, or you haven't invited them to your service account. Now, since all of these steps are complete, I can hit the publish button. So as I said, this usually takes about 20 minutes to publish, and let's see if we can come back and do a submission as well. And that's basically everything for Android publishing. Open the floor for questions now.
Yeah, publishing and submitting, and after submitting is kind of another story, right? Putting our apps to production or for test is another very issue that our users mainly asking for. And actually, Davey is asking. He's asking, based on your experience, how one should use the Play console to be efficient with tests. Do you suggest to go through all the tests mode, internal, external, etc.? Any recall or shortcut for small teams? By the way, you can ask your questions by yourselves as well. You don't need to post it to chat anymore. Just raise your hand. That's fine.
Oh, hey, Davey.
Hi there. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Oh, fantastic. Sorry, I was not used to ask my question by myself. It's even better. No, I just wanted to know, based on your experience, what would you recommend for small teams or someone who would like to try to test this app? Because in the Play console, you have different way to test your app. How one should go through all those steps to make sure he has an app with the less bug possible. It's mostly based on your experience. If you have seen any recommendation, any best practice that we should apply so we can go to production with the least mistakes possible. Thank you.
Yeah, great question. So let me see if I can actually highlight that show this here. So I'll go back to home. I'll select my demo app. So what basically Davey is saying that in testing, we have all of these testing tracks. One is pre-launch report, pre-registration. I don't have actually ever played with these yet, so I can't really tell you about these ones. All I know about is internal testing, closed testing, and open testing. We usually just use internal testing because this is the fastest. It does not require a review process from the App Store. And in the internal testing area, you can basically test most of the features in your app, apart from payments. So for payments, you need to go through closed testing. And in the closed testing track, what happens is you have to send your build to a review process. Google usually says that it could take from a couple of hours to 48 hours in total for the review process to be over. Usually that review process is automated, but sometimes they might just jump in and do a review manually as well. So once that review process gets over, that's when the app is actually released for your closed testing group to test it. Again, that means the app is not available on the store yet. It's only available to people who you add as internal testers or your testers. I think it's the same testing list that you have for all the tracks, but you can also have separate ones. So once the app is released, it usually takes like a few hours, even after releasing the app, for you to test it. Google has made some changes to speed up that process. And yeah, so after that few hours wait, your users would be able to install the app how they would do in general if the app was available to everyone. So there are no differences, Davey, in terms of the app performance or app features which are separate in the testing tracks or live on the store. So your app would function the same in the internal testing area as well as on the store. We always recommend our users to test their apps thoroughly in the internal testing or whichever testing track you prefer, to ensure one, everything works as expected. Our simulators do a decent job of showing how your app would look on a device, but when you run an app on an actual device, things might be different, because with device you have actual sensors and actual Wi-Fi network that's actually connecting via your phone, not via Draftbit and your computer. So ensuring all of those will basically result in a bug-free or almost bug-free app, because in this world we don't call anything bug-free. That's what I've learned the hard way. So once that's released, and why is it crucial to test your app? Because once you release your app to the stores, people are free to review an app, right? And you don't want people reviewing your app with bad reviews, especially when you're just starting up. Good reviews lead to more downloads. Bad reviews probably don't help that there too much. Does that answer your question, maybe?
Yeah, thank you very much. Awesome. Thank you so much.
So let me just, while this is happening, I'm just going to check the status and see what's going on with the build.
I think you might need more time, right?
Yep.
Because Android publishing takes like half an hour usually.
Correct. And I just want to ensure that the build has actually started or not as well, right? Because sometimes it will just not start depending on the configuration that we did.
And also, I have another question then. We had some users, don't want to, they're not ready to publish or they just want to test it locally, but internally, I mean, they're submitting their binary file manually and then downloading from there to their devices.
Right. So,
and also is there a problem when they want to, they're publishing again, so creating a new version and try to submit that one again manually and downloading that one? Is this going to be, I mean, could it be problem when putting the app to production?
yes, that's a great question. So basically what happens is if you want to make sure that when you create apps on Apple and when you're trying to generate an APK file instead of an Android app bundle. So let me just preface this by saying there are two different types of apps that you can produce with Google. One is an Android app bundle file, which you can't install locally on your device. The other is the APK file, which can be installed directly on your phone, bypassing the stores. Now, if you're installing an app with an APK, now that app is created in your Expo account as well. So it's sharing, it's created a key store file, which is an important concept that we can talk about in just a bit. But the idea here is if you're using an APKs, that can sometimes interfere with your Android app bundle files. So you have created a project in Expo and you have now created an APK file. It has its own version number. It has its own key store file. And then you can install it. It will work great on your devices. But when you try to then create another app, this time it's going to be an AAB file, which is sharing the same project credentials as your APK files. That can sometimes cause conflicts. So if you want to go the APK route, I would suggest using a different bundle ID, a different project name. That is also very important. Let me just showcase that very, very quickly if I can. Just bear with me a moment. So here, and I'm assuming my screen is still shared. Okay.
Yes.
So one thing to note with all your projects is right here in advanced, we have something called a scheme and a slug. Now, what's a scheme? A scheme is basically, think of it as a very basic example as your URL of your app. So for instance, if I call this demo/app, and so this means that all my links that I will generate, like the deep links for my screens, will have this prefix, which is demo/app. Once you install this app on the phone, the operating system kind of looks at this and stores it, just so it's aware that if someone is trying to open a URL starting with demo/app, it will try to open this app instead of opening a web page. So that's important. And when users don't generate these, the default is untitled app, which obviously doesn't make sense because once you're publishing an app, you should have your own app scheme. Now, coming to the second part, and this is important, that's the slug. So slug is basically not used by Google, but by Expo. So when you create a slug, this creates a project in the Expo account. If you have this empty, what happens is it tries to use your app name. In this case, that would become Android. And then the Android demo, I see, Davey, you raised your hands. Just bear with me a moment. Let me answer this and I'll come to you. So now that Android demo becomes a project in Expo that generates a new key store file. And which is great. You submit the file, everything is working great. You submit your app, it goes to the store, and now it's live in production. Now, for some reason, you change that name to Android production, maybe. So now, because your app name changed and you do a republish, it will create a new project in Expo. If that new project gets created, it will generate a new key store file for it. Think of a key store file as your key to your app, which basically means that you require that key to make updates to your application. And that key should be the same every time. So for those of you who must have seen this error that says, hey, your app was signed with this SHA key, but now the one that you're submitting is with a different key, that's 99% of the time the problem is that something changed that changed your Slug, which created a new project in the Expo world, and now you have a completely different key store. That's basically what I wanted to say. So go ahead, David. And I hope this makes sense to everyone. And if it doesn't, I'm happy to answer any clarifying questions.
So I have a question is regarding actually the Google Cloud account where you created the service account. So we use this account for several things, whether it's publishing an app, whether it's whatever Google product that we want to use, we often have to go there. Is there a way that you can just give us an overview about how it works and what are the steps that we need to think about where we always have to go through this platform? Because, for example, you create a service account to publish the app. I understood that it's in order to give access to Draftbit to be able to publish automatically, if I'm right, which I'm not sure, to be honest. But can you just explain to us how should we approach the Google Cloud, like console or whatever they call it, I can't remember. Just to understand what are the required steps for us every time we want to use one of the Google product or when we want to publish or everything related to Google, basically.
Another good question, Davey. And you're right. And I think you're coming from the point of view that when you require payments in the app, you need to create another service account for the service that we need called RevenueCat. Is that?
Whether it's payment, whether it's Google Calendar, whether it's any type of Google product, I believe that we have to go through it as well. Every time we want to use Google API, I feel like we have to go through this platform. And I'm just not sure, but it seems like every time we want to use any of the services, we have to go through it. So now payment is obviously part of it, but I guess it's a more complex topic. But it was just more like the basic overview about what we need to understand from this platform and how we use it related to Draftbit.
Sure. And before I answer this, I want to preface this by saying I'm not a Google Cloud expert. So I can only tell you things that I have come across during my time on testing all of these. Some good. So I think I did explain what the service account user and the service account file is. So it basically is asking for your permission to access Google services on your behalf, which is basically true in terms of both when you're publishing the app and also when you're doing the RevenueCat setup for this instance. Because even RevenueCat wants to talk to your Google API to find out what's happening in your app in terms of subscriptions, and then it takes that data and brings it to a third party, which in this case is RevenueCat. When we are publishing the app, it's Draftbit. Now, not all services require a service account user, only those services that need to access your Google credentials or your Google information requires that kind of a setup. So for instance, if you're doing Google Maps, for instance, in Google Maps, all you require is an API key from Google, and as a best practice, it asks you to basically restrict who can use those keys. So in the restrictions, if you're using it on an app, it will ask you for an Android app bundle. If you're using it on a website, it will ask you for a URL. Only requests coming from the app or that URL will have access to that key. To be honest, David, that's the extent of my knowledge. One thing I would say is always make sure that all of these settings for Google account is done with a single email address. What Google, at least the things that I've run into most of the times, is I created a service account in my personal account, and then I'm using my Draftbit account to do the publishing. That wouldn't work, right? Because these are two different accounts.
Clear. Thank you very much. Complex, complex platform for everybody, I guess.
Yeah, I'm like if you just go to that console and credentials, you will see there's a ton of cool things that you can do there, but you just need to understand what you're doing. And another thing that I forgot about that you get from the Google console account is the Google login. So if when you're doing your Google single sign-ons, you would need to do that setting there as well. But I don't think that requires a service account user. So just bear with me a moment. I think I'm running into some snags with the publishing. So I'm just going to take a quick look there, what's going on. But feel free to ask any more questions if you have. Oh, it's a lot of silence.
No questions? I mean, I think, Rahul, it doesn't have to be related to Android publishing, right? The questions.
Yeah, it could be anything Draftbit and not super hard, so I can answer them. I'm just joking. Yeah, you can ask any questions you like.
Not well.
Dennis has question.
Sure.
Hey guys, can you hear me? Okay, yeah. Hey. Look, Raul, this is something we have discussed with you in the past, but overall, like, my background is that we are developing a health-related app, and we are very concerned about the privacy and the data, data security, etc. So when we think about the process of publishing the app through the Draftbit, then Expo, and then finally Google, and there's a lot of exchange of different keys, accounts going on. So how do you think about, preserving data security in this setup? Any best practice, any concerns you would highlight? Any suggestions you would share? Thank you.
Great question, Dennis. And so security can have different aspects to it. There could be, how would I explain this? So just so you know, anything that you put in your app, it can be dissected and that information can be pulled out of your app. Now, is it easy to do? That's not the case. You require special tools and a lot of knowledge to basically unpack and repack an Android app bundle file or an IPA file. Now, is this just the case with apps? That's not true. Anything, even a web page, a website, all of those things, there's always going to be a security concern on no matter what you do. Now, best practices in this case, I will defer to what Expo basically says. So Expo says that they offer something called Expo environment variables, but Expo's environment variables, according to themselves, is not super secure either. The best thing that Expo recommends, if you're storing API keys or important information that can be misused, it's always the best practice to store them on your server and pull them on runtime instead of packing it with the app. Now, specifically answering Dennis, your question, I don't think there is anything in terms of, again, this is a general use case. It could be true and false for anyone. But so far, in my experience, we haven't noticed any problems in terms of moving from Draftbit to Expo and to the Google Play console. There are, as you already know, there's like millions of apps on the Play console. Some of them have like higher security concerns, some of them don't. But the security on the store is basically governed by Google. When it comes to Expo, I would say the same thing. Expo is a platform which is used by maybe not millions, like hundreds of thousands of apps are built with Expo. And the best practices that Expo recommends, if you use them, even then, it's not 100% guarantee, but at least it gives you a peace of mind saying that I have followed the best practices.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So this kind of helps to to just to ease the mind a little bit. But overall, going ahead, that I think that would be great if you guys can, like in your documents and the tutorials or somewhere else, describe this security domain, which is not covered yet. Various aspects of it, transferring data from the backend to the app, storing the data in the app, all the stuff. That would be super helpful. Not urgent, but at some point of time.
Sure.
Thank you.
And then again, Dennis, I would say that we'll try our best to do it, but as is the case with what I just explained, it's one of the same cases when you're talking about getting your data from the backend as well. I think the most the connections from your backend and Draftbit are HTTPS connections, which are already secured, and that's what most of the technology uses. Even on the web, they use HTTPS. The most important thing to save for you in your case is your database, right? Because that's where all the data, the user personally identified information is, all of that is stored in your backend. I'm going to be a backend agnostic in terms of it could be either Xano, Supabase, or any other third-party backend. That's where you're going to make sure that the data is safe. And if you're dealing with HIPAA compliance and any other sort of medical compliance, you need to make sure that you have read through those compliance policies and follow those. So
okay, makes sense. Yeah, great advice. Thanks. Thank you, Rahul.
And David, a question, Rahul.
It's more like a global question for Draftbit team. Understanding what you guys are working on right now, what can we expect in the near future in terms of feature, in terms of anything? I don't know, just giving a general update about what's going on behind the scene and just like some excitement about what's coming. So then we know what we can include in our apps soon. Thank you.
Well, considering we have 5 minutes left and the app hasn't been published yet, so probably we gotta do it as a part 2, or maybe we'll just do this quickly in our next iteration of office hours. But I'm happy to answer your question, Davey or Mesa. If you want to take a stab at it, you are most welcome.
Thank you. I think you can go ahead. I'm not sure how much I can tell about it, you know.
Sure. So the next big thing that Draftbit is introducing, according to me, is custom blocks. It's not fully out yet, if I remember it correctly. We are basically running it through the ringer just to make sure that there are no bugs. Because again, it's a very, very major thing that we are bringing in Draftbit. And what it does, so I think probably most of you guys will be saying, hey, we already have custom blocks. Why are we reintroducing it? So we had a very primitive implementation of custom blocks before in Draftbit. So what we used to do was we would just take your code and move it to another screen, just blindly copy pasting it, which works well in some use cases. But imagine if you have an app with 60 screens and you have a custom block that you would need to edit. Davey, trust me, there are multiple people in this room which have apps more than 60 screens, including Amit, who is also here and probably listening, I hope. Feel free to chime in at any point of time, Amit. We all love to hear from you. So coming back to this, so now what the difference is with these custom blocks, it's going to actually be a custom block. So if you have this custom block on 5 different screens, and if you make a change to the custom block, that change would be reflected on all 5 screens, which wasn't the case with our prior implementation of saved blocks. Now, this leads into so many different use cases that we have totally not even explored all of them. So this means, you design a component once, use it in multiple places, edit it, gets changed in multiple places. Would give you, again, please don't hold me to it, but would help us implement, the draw animation component, for instance, would help us implement some sort of an auth functionality. So, you can have a custom block that handles your auth logic in terms of, hey, if the user is locked out, what should happen? So all of those things get basically compiled into one single code block and can be reused and edited. And for Davey, I know you're sorry if it's too much personal information that I'm sharing, but I know your app as well, so it will be great for your app as well. So you can reduce a whole bunch of screens just by using those custom blocks instead.
I feel there's a lot of people waiting for this feature that's like super exciting because it's like obviously when you have created something, you just want to duplicate your screen or reuse what you've done before. And if you make any change because it doesn't work on Android or it doesn't work on iOS, then that's great to just know that you modify one thing and every screen is covered. So I'm sure that a lot of people will wait for this with excitement too. So thank you so much for sharing this. This is huge. And in terms of timeline, are we talking about weeks, months, quarters? Just more or less. I'm not going to take it like exactly the way you say. It's just to understand if it's expected for this year, next year, or just having a vague idea.
We are hoping for within this year, probably sooner. But what we have realized is we want to do things right the first time instead of putting in something which is half baked. So that's why we have decided it will take us longer to implement new features or release new features, but we want to make sure the features that we do release are thoroughly tested.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Cool. If there are no more questions, then I would suggest we take a leave. Unless Rumesa, you have anything else?
No, and we don't have any other questions, I guess. We covered at least very important part, the first part of the publishing to Android publishing. And we just left the submission process, right, Rahul? Maybe we can cover it later.
Yeah.
And Please go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, good. I was just going to say yes. We can do it in our next session. It'll take us 10 minutes.
Yeah, and we have other great topics coming for next office hour as well. So please keep your eyes open on community and please ask your questions there and here in office hours as well. And you're always welcome in intercom with your issues. We are happy to help you. And Gavin says, thanks, Rahul and Ramesh. I'll watch over the recording tomorrow to set up Expo, etc. Great.
Great,
Okay.
Gavin. Thank you very much, Ramesa, for hosting these office hours and fabulous job that you do on the community and on Intercom.
Thank you, Rahul, for joining. Really, Rahul is very busy, and having you here is awesome. Thank you for providing insight and all of those helpful information for us. Thanks a lot. Okay, guys. Thanks, Amit, by the way, for joining again. Thanks, Davey, Dennis, and Gavin. See you on next office hours, hopefully. And that's all. Cheers. Bye.
Bye.
Bye, guys. Thank you.
Thank you.